Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to give you my September wrap-up. I have only finished 4 books in September, but I will actually talk about 6 books today because I finished 2 more on the 1st of October. And it kind of feels like stupid not to include them because I read most of it in September as well. So we have 6 books to go through. Let's get started. Now, the first book I finished in September was How Beautiful We Are by Imbolo and Mbue. This was one of my most anticipated books of last year, and then I never actually got around to reading it. So I was very glad that I finally sat down and read this. I had very strong 5-star vibes with this book. This follows a small town in Africa that has been kind of contaminated and exposed by an American oil company who is drilling very near to their village. They actually took over some of their land because the government said like it's the government's land and they can go there. And we have this small village trying to fight all the pollution and the death of all the children that are going on because of that oil company. Now, the premise of this is perfect, and the majority of this book was actually so good and I would highly recommend it. But the ending left me a little bit disappointed because we have 2 perspectives in this book. We are following a perspective that is basically one generation of children of this town, and then we follow a family in this town and we switch through multiple of the members of that family. So we have the uncle, the mother, the grandmother and stuff like that. But they're all centered around a female character that is very important for the future of this village. And without spoiling it, in the end, there is a ritual rape scene done to her to make her a woman. And that was never challenged. Actually, it was portrayed in a very positive light, like it actually did something to her, like something positive. And I just did not like that. I really hated that. And I think you can put stuff like that in your books, but then like challenge it in some way. And yeah, I couldn't overlook it. So I still gave this book 4 stars because up until that point it was a 5-star read for me. But yeah, I just don't like rape for any reason, and I don't like it when it is portrayed in a positive light, no matter what. Then the next book I finished was my audiobooks, and that was The Burning God by R F Kuang. This is obviously the conclusion to the Poppy War trilogy, and this is a trilogy that was one of the 5 series I wanted to read this year. I do like binging series and I had very high hopes for this one, but unfortunately it kind of fell flat for me. Up until the end, I didn't really care about anything in this book. I did like the main character of Rin, but I felt like apart from some of the character dynamics, this book just didn't interest me, and I have realized that I just don't like reading about war. So that is the major theme of the series. So it was obvious that I wouldn't enjoy it, but I didn't know that before. So now I know. I still gave this book 4 stars. I think it was done quite well, and if you're more into that kind of fantasy, I think you will really enjoy it. I think that if you enjoyed the Poppy War, you will probably enjoy this last book. It had quite a few interesting twists and turns, but it also had this like very meandering feeling of the characters just going there and fighting that battle and killing that person and then going somewhere else and doing this. And there were just so many like dead ends in the plot that I found to be very not enjoyable. And we have these like things that are like build up so much just to fall apart in seconds. And yeah, that was just not enjoyable to me because I just felt like some of the things could have been cut down a little bit. We didn't need like this like almost like big origin story for something that is gone like that and doesn't play any important role in the plot at all. So yeah, the ending is quite interesting as well. I think that a lot of people were not very happy with the ending because our main character basically does a 180 in like 2 seconds, and there's no explanation for that, there's no build up to it, and I found that to be very disappointing as well. So overall, I personally wouldn't recommend the series to people who have the same taste as me, but I still can acknowledge that this is a solid fantasy series, and if you're at least a little bit interested, I think you should give it a go. Then the next book I finished was another audiobook, and that was Nettle and Mbue by T. Kingfisher. This was a book that I needed to pick up after The Burning God. I just needed something that was comfy but a little bit spooky because we're going into the spooky season, and Nettle and Mbue was just what I needed. It was so good. It's quite short, it is cozy, but it is spooky, and we have these like amazing characters that we follow along, and honestly you just want to be friends with them, and it was just great. It was just what I needed. I gave it 4.5 stars. I didn't like the first part of it, like the first maybe 20 to 25% just didn't feel that well done to me because we get a lot of the backstory in that part, and I thought that the way it was structured was just a bit odd in this first part. So we start out basically right in the action. So our main character is a princess, but she has been living in a cloister, and she wants to save her sister from her evil husband who is mistreating her. And this husband is a prince, so it's obviously not very easy to get rid of him, but that's what our main character is trying to do. And for that, she sought the help of a dust wife. And that's basically like a witch character. Dust wives live on like cemeteries, and they make sure that the ghosts stay there and don't venture out or anything like that. And this dust wife gives our main character 3 impossible tasks to do so that she will get her help. And we meet the main character in the middle of the second task, but then we go back and get all of the backstory with like the sisters and how they married and how the oldest sister died under quite mysterious circumstances because of that same prince, and then the second oldest sister was married to him, and our main character was sent to the cloister. Then we get a lot of backstory about the cloister and stuff like that. So I felt like that was just too long, like for the length of the book. I think I would have cut this like backstory part down quite a bit, and it would have worked a little bit better. But that's really my only critique. Apart from that, this book is perfection to me. As I said, super cozy vibes because the characters are also loving and supporting to each other. We have these like really unique characters that come together. We have a little bone dog, we have a chicken that has a demon in it, we visit the goblin market, and yeah, I think it had like the right amount of spooky and cozy, and it also turned a lot of things on its head, like things you would usually see in fairy tales. And what I also really enjoyed is that our main character isn't like super smart. She's like not the prettiest, not the smartest, and she still gets things done, and she still has her heart in the right place. And I love that. I love seeing that. We don't always need the like perfect girls to be the ones who actually get shit done. Can be very normal people, just like us. So yeah, I thought it was brilliant. Then the next book I finished was City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This is the first book in a trilogy, the Devabat trilogy, and I was very excited to finally get to this. Again, one of those series I wanted to read this year. I had hoped to read it in the summer, but it just didn't work out that well. But yeah, in this one we follow Nari, who is a like normal girl, like she's an orphan, but she's getting by because she has a little healing business where she sells people like magical cures and stuff like that. And sometimes she actually does help some people, but if someone comes to her and doesn't really need any healing, she will probably still find something to sell to them. And yeah, so she's a little bit of a con girl, but she also helps people. But one day she does this like a magical ritual, and she tries something a little bit different, and that actually summons a djinn. And from there it gets pretty crazy because then she has to be rescued from the Ifrit, and they go to the city of Devabat. Now, the other perspective we follow in here is Ali, who is the prince of Devabad, and he has been brought up to be a warrior. His older brother will be king one day, and he's supposed to be his like main guard. So yeah, he's a warrior, but he's also a scholar. He's really religious in a way, and he believes that like all beings are equal. And the like main conflict in this book in the city is that there is like pure-blooded jinn, and there is people called the Shafit who are mixed between pure-blooded jinn and humans. And some of these Shafit still have like powers. They may look very much like a jinn, and others do not. And they are basically treated like second-class citizens, and that is even a nice way of putting it. They're very badly mistreated, and Ali wants to change that. He wants that every citizen in this Devabad city is treated equally. And that obviously doesn't go well with all his other jinn people. So yeah, that's the kind of like setup, and a lot of stuff happens in here. I've since then also finished the second book, Kingdom of Copper, so I thought I'd just talk about them here together. So City of Brass is obviously the first book, so we have a lot of groundwork done, but I really enjoyed it, and what I found so interesting is that we get two perspectives, and I loved both of them equally. I was never disappointed to change perspective to the other person because I just really enjoyed what we got here, and there is a little bit of romance, but it's not overwhelming. There is a lot of political intrigue, we get a lot of the court life, and I just really enjoyed our two main characters. They're both really, really great. So I gave this first book a 4.5 stars. And then I went into Kingdom of Copper. Now, this takes place 5 years after what happens at the end of A City of Brass, which the ending was really wild. So I could not wait to read more after finishing this book. But I think even though I hate time jumps, this did a really good job of carrying it over through the kind of prologue bit of Kingdom of Copper, where we kind of get like a very short wrap up of what happened after the first book, and then we are 5 years later, and I think it actually makes sense because all of our characters are settled a little bit more in their environments, and then things start happening that is like stirring up everything again. And the last 200 pages of this were such a wild ride. I could not put it down. I read it literally in a day, and it takes me forever to read this. Like, I spent yesterday for probably like 6-7 hours just reading this book because I just could not put it down, and it was fantastic. I gave this one 5 stars. And I'm very intrigued to read the final book now, which I will hopefully do in the beginning of October, so I still have some time for my spooky reads. Now, speaking of spooky reads, there is one last book I wanted to mention here, and that is Belladonna by Adalyn Grace, another audiobook that I finished just at the first of the month, though. I read most of it in September. In this one, we are following a girl called Signa. Her complete family dies when she's just a baby because they are all poisoned. But when death comes to also claim her, he realizes that she is different, because when he touches her, instead of seeing her past, he sees her future, and he can't take her. So our main character Signa basically can't die, but since she lost all her family, she's like passed around with like different guardians who are all after her like very big inheritance that she will actually get access to when she turns 20. So now when the story starts, she's almost there. She has like half a year left or something like that before she gets her inheritance. But in a little bit of an accident, she kills her current guardian, and then she gets to go to this like manor to a new family who will take care of her. But in this family, the mother has just passed away, and the daughter is sick as well. And so Signa decides to find out what's going on to stop this, to stop the daughter from dying as well. So in this book, we get a little bit of a mystery because it is mainly about who's doing the killing here, but it's more so a romance, and it is quite an interesting romance because it is between Death and Signa. And so if you enjoy like hate to love, if you enjoy human girl, eternal being kind of romance stuff, I think this is an interesting one to check out. I don't think it's the best one out there, but I did have fun with this book, and I think that there's quite some little spicy scenes, like not actual smut, but definitely a little bit of spice in there as well. So if you want some makeout sessions with Death, definitely read this book. I thought that the whole mystery thing was very predictable. It was exactly who I thought it was. And there was also another suspicion I had about a different character that was also correct. So it's not for the like mystery lovers, I think it is more so for the fantasy romance girlies. But I had a lot of fun with this book. I gave it 4 stars. So I don't know if I will actually read the sequel, but we'll see about that next year. So that's all the books that I have read in September. Let me know what your best read of the month was. I would love to hear about that. For me, it was definitely the Devabad trilogy and also Nettle and Bone. And yeah, I'm just so excited to go into spooky season now. I hope you're too, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye!